If you want to kill people to save money, say it.
If I ever become a judge, I will always remember it.
My father was also a judge.
Implicitly psychopathic murderers.
And maybe they're not at the end of their life.
Responsibility.
Data in Europe suggests that the people who are taking the assisted dying way out are largely university educated, they're upper and middle class, they're male, and they're some form of terminal illness. So I'm not sure if it's well substantiated that that there's any reason to fear. Thankfully, we have the courts and the BC Civil Liberties Union. I think politicians are loath to touch this issue because of the implications, and so I'm really thankful for the BC Civil Liberties and for the courts. And we've watched this now through the BC Supreme Court and the Court of Appeal, and we're at the final show.
It will be one of the most significant decisions in the Supreme Court's history. Tomorrow, it will decide whether Canadians should have the constitutional right to control the way they die.
The court provided explicit guidance to Parliament as to how to remedy the constitutional violation.
The courts determined that physicians are entirely capable of dealing with these patient requests under normal medical standards. Neither a specialized assessment, nor a psychiatric evaluation, nor a vulnerability assessment should be a requirement for all physician-assisted dying requests.
Mental illness should not be excluded as a qualifying condition. Many people who are mentally ill are capable for the purposes of making end-of-life decisions.
We are saying that MAiD is for a medical condition that will not get better, one that we call irremediable. We need to then be able to predict that. And with mental illnesses, all of the evidence shows us that we are wrong more than half the time when we try to make those predictions. The second issue is that we need to be able to filter out suicidality, which, unique to mental illnesses, can be a symptom of the very illness itself. We need to be able to filter out that suicidality from other motivations for MAiD requests. And again, the evidence shows we can't, and that risks marginalized people.
Physicians should be able to use their own judgment, as they do in all cases in which a patient exercises informed consent in respect of an end-of-life decision.
In the fall of 1939, Adolf Hitler signed a document entrusting his physicians, Karl Brandt and Philip Böhler, with responsibility to grant mercy death to those who, after a most critical diagnosis on the basis of human judgment, as he named it, are considered incurable.
The Carter decision applies to a competent adult person. In other cases, the Supreme Court of Canada has cautioned against using arbitrary age limits that bear no relationship to an individual's competence to make a medical decision. We urge Parliament to affirm the principle that physician-assisted dying should rest on competence and not on age.
Yes, it does include children. The whole program began with the elimination of deformed children. But the children are never gassed. They are always given the lethal injection. The injection is never administered by one person alone. There is always three of us. This ensures shared responsibility, and often the children struggle and need to be restrained. It is a most unpleasant task we perform, but we must obey the Führer's command without question. Therefore, if one nurse falters, the other two are there to lend support.
I think it's fundamentally incompatible with life to tell someone they have to live it. I think it's fundamentally incompatible with what we should understand to be life, for one of the qualities of that life to be involuntary. And that you can't capture people in life and you can't force people to live. And it's certainly not the government's job.
At that point that Canada would sort of see the light and read the judgment, it was so carefully reasoned, and say, hey, we've got a problem here, and maybe we're gonna take this judgment and fix this law.
My fellow Canadians, my name is Audrey Parker. I am pleased to say that accepting my death really allowed me to live my life on my own terms. I am grateful to live in Canada, a country where I can choose my death. You can get involved by contacting Dying with Dignity Canada, a fabulous organization working on the front lines to defend your end-of-life rights.
In times of uncertainty, people are afraid. And when we're afraid, we rely upon the herd to guide us. Sure, the crowd's guidance can be a useful crutch to lean upon, but what happens when we use it too often, when we're just lazy? The concept we're teasing out here is known as herding behavior, and we can define it as people doing what others do instead of using their own information to make decisions.
So it was really a battle of David and Goliath proportions.
I mean, you're not a deliberative body. You're not parliament. You don't have the benefit of submissions from a lot of people. It's just the lawyers. And you don't answer to the people. You don't answer to people who elect politicians.
If you read that decision, you'll see a huge amount of attention paid to consequences.
Would you like to see a system that is more like the United States, where we really give judges a good grilling in public, on television, and it's difficult?
No. You know, in the US, they have elected judges at the lower court level. Here in Canada, the judges have to apply. They are looked at by an independent committee who will make recommendation to the Justice Minister or to the Prime Minister. So it's very different. And that's why I don't think that system will come to Canada.
Because this corrupt system never wants to hear from any of us. And we're bursting at the seams. We can't take it anymore.
I don't think that the risk of a floodgates is real enough to impose that burden on that group of people.
Throughout the arguments today, and I think in that sense it was good that the judges heard these arguments, that actually that standard, that objective standard, it's so fluid. Once we cross this line and we allow some assisted suicide, we're seeing that there's no stopping it. It can move on and on.
We've now, as of 2023, had more deaths by MAiD than by COVID.
There is a new snapshot tonight of how many Canadians are opting for medical assistance in dying. Since it became legal in 2016, the rate at which the option has grown in Canada has been faster than anywhere else in the world. CTV's Alison Bamford on the findings.
More and more Canadians are opting for medical assistance in dying.
The federal government is going to pause the expansion of medical-assisted dying until 2027. Health Minister Mark Holland says provinces and the healthcare systems they run need more time to prepare.
We want to make sure is that the system is trained to that standard, that the curriculums are adopted, and what I specifically heard from my health counterparts in provinces and territories is in order to get to that state, they were going to need a significant amount of time.
Are we just okay with everyone lying now? Is that where we're at? We accept lies as truth and there's no moral qualms with that? Because if anybody is a God-fearing individual right now, the whole idea is I don't really care what you believe in. All I ask is stop lying. Be honest. If you want to kill people to save money, say it.
These are people who are in the system.
have been receiving treatment for years and years and years. These are people who have been in the system for many, many years, have received care. They're not people who can't get in to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist. They're people who've been in the system through everybody can't be cured. The people who receive MAiD in Canada, about 78% were receiving palliative care at the time. And of the people who were not receiving palliative care, that's another 20% or so, 90% had access to palliative care and chose not to use it.
And the Nazis basically said that. They said, Jesus, you know, if you guys went into those back wards, you'd think death is preferable. And plus, you know, it's not like it's cheap to keep those people alive in their desperate suffering.
The 26th of March, 1945. On their way to central Germany, the US Army units liberate Hadamar, a psychiatric clinic and one of the 6 killing facilities in the Nazi so-called euthanasia program. They come upon catastrophic conditions. Over 500 patients are starved and weakened by systematic neglect and targeted malnutrition. Although the US Army provides medical care and additional rations to the patients, for many, the help is too late.
You are somebody who assists people to die, and you have done that more than 400 times. What is the process there for somebody who seeks this route? Because here it would be 2 doctors and a judge. What happens where you are?
So for us, it's 2 doctors or nurse practitioners who have to assess and agree that the person fulfills all of the eligibility criteria. And then we have to report all of this, and there's an oversight that checks everything and investigates if anything seems a little bit off. Right. So it has oversight, but it's after the fact, not beforehand.
You'd have to convince me that you were suffering unbearably.
Add on all the responsibility of it and the idea that if you did it wrong, that people might be out there suffering because you did it wrong.
So this is a story about a lawsuit grounded in a tragic situation. A man with chronic back pain and bipolar disorder who allegedly used a day pass from St. Paul's Hospital to end his life through medical assistance. A 52-year-old man named JMM got approval for MAiD, but later changed his mind, deciding he wanted to try to deal with his back pain through other means. Now, his children, former spouse, and father claim he never should have been eligible for MAiD in the first place.
So when we brought this case forward, we had not only the evidence of Gloria Taylor, but we also had all this evidence from all these other jurisdictions, places like Oregon and Washington and the Netherlands and Belgium.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Today I want to talk about 2 aspects of the bill. What the bill could have done in terms of safeguards but doesn't, and what the bill doesn't do but could never resolve. On the first point, I want to talk about the safeguards, and in particular the legal and judicial ones, which I think are grossly inadequate. Bad law on trivial things is bad enough, and I've seen a lot of that in my time in this House. Bad law on matters of life and death is unforgivable. We've spoken about the role of doctors. Let's think about the role of judges. The test which is to be applied is a low one. It is the civil law threshold. This is a balance of probabilities. This means that a judge could see real risk of coercion and still sign off this individual for assisted death. If the threshold was not reached of 50% or more, the judge would sign off the individual. Next of kin is not informed. There's no right of appeal, which is extremely unusual in English law. And the process is conducted in secrecy. It could be done on papers alone. Transparency is absolutely critical to the law. It's one of the oldest principles in our English legal system. I think of people like Jeremy Bentham, who spoke hundreds of years ago, and they said that evil can arise in secrecy. It is publicity that is at the heart of justice. This is not a transparent process, and that leaves it woefully open to abuse. The second point I would make is this. We all want to believe in this House that the laws we pass are final, full stop, the end. It's not the case. And I worry, in fact, I am certain that as night follows day, this law, if passed, will change. Not as a result of the individuals in this chamber or in the other place, but as a result of judges in other places. We've seen that time and again. It may be on either side of the debate, but it will happen. This act, if passed, will be subject to activist judges in Strasbourg. They will change it fundamentally, and we have to be prepared for that. I don't want to see that happen. The last point I would make is this, and it doesn't relate to what we might be able to do to improve the bill. It's something that we can never resolve as a House. It's that I don't think it's as much as a slippery slope. I think it is like a cliff edge. When we walk out of this chamber or out of the gates of this building tonight, we'll walk into, in a way, a different country if this bill passes. There'll be different conversations around kitchen tables. There'll be different conversations had by couples lying in bed at night, on quiet country walks when people talk about difficult things. And they won't be conversations that I think make our country a better place. And more important than that, there will be people who don't speak about these things at all. There will be imperceptible changes in behaviours. There'll be the grandmother who worries about her grandchildren's inheritance if she doesn't end her life. There'll be the widow who relies on the kindness of strangers, who worries, who it preys on her conscience. There will be people who are, and we all know them in our lives, shy, who have low self-esteem, who have demons within them. I know those people. I can see them in my mind's eye. They are often poor. They are vulnerable. They are the weakest in our society. And they look to us. They look to Parliament to represent them, to support them, to protect them. In their interests, I'm going to be voting against the bill today. Sometimes we have to fetter our freedoms. We, the competent, the capable, the informed, sometimes have to put the most vulnerable in society first.
We won. Unanimous. We got everything.
Wow!
I saw through the evidence in this case that there are fates worse than death.
Do I like doing this? I love doing this. I've never done anything more worthwhile, and I doubt I ever will.
I don't think it's a good idea to give the state that power.
I think it's a terrible idea.